Welcome back to the Dynamic Life Cycles podcast. This week, I have one of the most energetic and lovable humans I've ever met joining me. Debora De Napoli, who has been making an unfiltered name for herself since 2013, when she burst into the adventure filmmaking world with an emotional and touching documentary film. Since then, she has been loud and proud, linking people and creating awareness about many of the obstacles she's faced in her 50 plus years on the planet. If you enjoy this episode or any of the other podcasts, please jump on and give it a follow, or even a 5-star review, as it will help me reach more like-minded people. Enjoy your listen. All right, Debora, how are you?
Hey, I'm great, Jared. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, no problems. I'm glad to have you on. It's been, I don't even know how many years. I'm going to say like I got here in 2018, and it wasn't long after that you started appearing at Steed Cycles, and your energy is pretty unforgettable.
Aw.
And once we got into the podcast at Steed, there was a few people asking when you were coming on, and
Sweet.
it never, I don't know why, it never really happened. There was I guess lots of different things that were happening at the time, and but here we are.
And then we had a pandemic.
Well, we did, yes.
And then I moved to Salt Spring. So, I mean, a number of reasons, but here we are. Yeah, this is fun.
So, yeah, well, I'd say welcome. I'm stoked to have you here, and the big reason I'd say is your energy is just contagious, and it's everything from just what you do in the community, how you do it, who you surround yourself with, and all of that just makes me so happy. And it's I just wanted to get more and learn more about your whole story, and I didn't even realize that you had and we'll dive into this soon, but your brain injury and then all of the other things that have happened over all the years. And then how long you've been writing for as well. It seems like there's this massive, I shouldn't even say seems, there is this massive growth that happened through COVID with the cycling industry. And not to put you in that same boat, but it seems like there was a lot of people that just came out of the woodworks. But the more research I did, I realized that you've been around for a very long time in the cycling industry. And it's kind of cool because you don't normally see that, one, in a female, but two, in general, I think, anymore.
Yeah. I think it's because I was fat. So nobody would take you seriously.
So
enter e-bike.
Fun fact, because I wouldn't call you fat, but fun fact, the reason Kim Steed rides his bike so much was because he was chubby in high school.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's actually photos of it. He's going to kill me for saying that, but it's true. He'll tell you the stories.
Yeah. Well, now I'm the it girl, it's well, I'm queer, I'm a woman, I'm, I guess bigger bodied, I would say. And there's just so much more acceptance and awareness around that now I just kind of
you feel all the
I tick all the boxes.
Tick all the boxes to say you went from being that token, whatever it needed to be, to now you are it.
Yeah. A lot of that was self-creation in a way too, working with brands like 7 Mesh and not being able to fit into their clothes and having to call them up and go, I don't want to look like sausage casing. So what can we do? Because, these quads got to fit somewhere. And now we have a whole line, extended sizing that 7 Mesh has brought on where I've been their fit model and have helped them in designing some stuff for our queer community as well. So it's just kind of reaching out to these people and not being afraid. Just saying, hey, I'm a writer.
And that's it.
I deserve clothes.
And I remember, so I have done a podcast with both TJ and Ian from up there, and they're both awesome dudes, and their whole business model was based around, what do they call it? They're in their business deck there was a blank page, and it was like, why is there a blank page? It's like, because they want it to be people like them. And they're just like average dudes.
Yeah.
They're not elite by any means.
Yeah.
Very good businessmen, but in the sporting athletic world, I wouldn't call them the elitist of people. But that's what makes them so special. And I think it's funny when I hear people sort of criticize their clothing and the cost of their clothing, but they make it for people that need, whether it be the plus size clothing or they need that good quality sort of riding gear, almost without using the word eterics of mountain biking, but that's essentially what it came from.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're such good dudes up there, and I'm stoked that I didn't realize that was part of your whole push in that world, because I knew they were going through a bunch of different sort of changes, and there was a couple of new girls that started up there a few years back.
Yeah.
So I guess that's who you were working with, like Lauren and those girls?
Lauren. Like I called them in like 2019, 2020. And so we've been working on pushing this extended sizing out. And it was really just like, like we can't be fitting into men's clothing. We are like, like real normal people. And even like, I'm not just like saying this for women, but women in particular, especially in mountain biking, unless you like fit a certain body mold, like the fit models are all pretty petite, like very elite. And that's not who's necessarily riding, especially not our shore mountains. Like we are a like significant demographic of like different body shapes, sizes, weights, heights. And I mean, I don't know, like we've got hips.
You do, but I look at it in like, you see it a lot in the road world, or even in the running world for that matter, where trail runners have muscle and road runners don't.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you compare a lot of the females from North Van to the, let's just call them like the kits girls, or the yoga girls, if you want to call it that, there's a very different body shape in that sense. And a bit more of that mountain body shape is what's needed, I think, a lot of the time in that clothing structure.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to sort of, like, I mean, nobody can really see me because we're in a podcast, but I do also teach yoga. So it's interesting when I walk into a class and a lot of people are like, wait, you're the instructor? And it's like, fuck yeah, I really am. And then it's like, it doesn't diminish the quality of class. In fact, it sometimes makes it better, because a lot of people don't think, oh yeah, like when you're like doing like a forward fold or whatever, like you got to like move your boobs out of the way. And people don't think about that a lot. So, yeah.
I don't know. I've done a lot of yoga and Pilates in the past, and when you see the female instructor practically fold herself in half because she's
like, what?
the diameter of a pencil, and you're like, I'm a cyclist. My body just doesn't do that. Yeah. It's like it becomes intimidating a little bit, and so I think it'd be.
Well, that's the whole relatable thing, right? And I think that's kind of maybe in a way why I sort of exploded into the scene, like in mountain biking, is I think I'm relatable, and I think people see themselves in me because I'm unapologetic and I just sort of show up. And there's a lot of like, like doubt talk sometimes, but for the most part, like I just show up as myself, completely unfiltered most of the time, and people like that.
But I think that's what's different in today's society, is so many people are so censored and they're unsure what to say and how to say it. And that's, I think, what separates you for that perfect reason is you don't have that filter. You're not scared to get out there and say certain things. Like I can't even remember, I don't think it was a VIMF, but it was one of the movie nights, one of the mountain bike movie nights that you were hosting.
Right. Oh my God, I think I know which one it was.
Downtown somewhere, and all you...
Did I just get dumped? And
yeah. And I think, but it wasn't even the consistent, like, if anyone's single, come and see me comments. It was the Miranda Miller was there, and you almost tripped her over, or you pretended to or something. And then I don't even know if you knew the microphone was on, but you're like, I almost just tripped Miranda Miller.
And she was like, not a chance.
Yeah, and she's like, not even a chance. And I don't think either of you knew that the microphone was on, but the whole audience, like the full theater, heard the whole thing happen. And everyone was just like wetting himself laughing. But I think that's what makes you, and that's what's so cool. But
well, it allows for other people to just be themselves too. It's like, oh, we don't have to, like tie our, like we don't have to like do all of our buttons to the top. It's like we can be a little chill and relax. And I think like what the world has certainly taught us, especially going through COVID, is we need more play and more fun. And perhaps maybe that's why I've become a little more known in mountain biking, definitely in like the MC work that I've been doing, and the like ride events, like Ride Lab, for instance, is just have fun, right?
Yeah. So tell me a bit more about this, because I know I had Ash Kelly on. She spoke a bit about Ride Lab. You've been on a bunch of different panels. Like you're part of, as you said, like 7Mesh, Pivot. You've been with other brands in the past. As I say, like, tell me a bit more about like you in the community, because I feel like there's so many different aspects that you're pushing and I guess like creating awareness around. Like, tell me about some of those things that you're doing.
Yeah, well, Ride Lab is a 3-day mountain bike festival geared towards people that identify as female, whether they are trans or non-binary. And it is, in the past, we've had it in Squamish. We're going to move it over to Cumberland next year. And it's different from other mountain bike festivals because the conversations that we have, like our fireside chats are really insightful and very meaningful. And, we don't need to teach people how to change, a flat tire. We don't need to have those tech talks. We need to like have conversations about things that are happening in the world and how we are being affected, and, like social injustice and the intersectionality of colonization, and like what we can do to bring in, break down the barriers of, people of color, Indigenous people, queer people. Like, how can we create these safe spaces? And so those are some of the conversations that we have. But also, we fucking ride. Like, we get some of the top guides and coaches, and we go out all day, and then we come back, and we have après, and we've got pizza, and we've got races, and we have a lot of fun, and then we do these chats. And when I was invited to be host and MC, that was a spinoff from the work that I'd been doing with She Summits, which sort of, I guess followed a little bit of that outline, but wasn't necessarily geared just towards mountain biking, and that's great. But it was more about agency and empowerment, and that is that's in total alignment with who I am and what I want to see more in the community. And as we sort of touched on, like for me, like my body awareness and acceptance of that, especially in mountain biking. Like I remember I was, I guess like 2013, I wanted to be one of the first women to bike the Canadian Rockies from peak to peak. It didn't happen in that way because I was dealing with a bit of an injury, but I remember when I still did it, and I still filmed it as a documentary. It's just we had to tweak it. And I remember getting like a bike fit. I won't mention like the who did the fit for me, but it was here in Vancouver at a local bike shop, and I was telling him about what I was up to, and I was like, "Do you think I could do it?" And he's like, "No." And I was like, "Why not?" He's like, and he kind of like looked at me, and he was like, "You just don't look like you can do it." And I was like, "Well, fuck you, and thank you, and I'm gonna do it." So it's kind of like always like bumping up against just like breaking through some of the stereotypes and the mentality, especially around mountain biking. There's like, especially as like women or queer people, there's a lot that we have to go through in order to like share space and create space. Is here, I've noticed it here because this is where I predominantly ride, and there's a lot of dudes, but now it's like, oh, we are now like finally in a place where we can still share space. And I think a lot of that comes from we're having these festivals. We've got these mountain bike clubs dedicated towards women. And I remember like some guy was saying, why do we need another like queer thing? Or why do we need another women's thing? Or why do we need to have like a color the trails thing? And it's like, because we need it. Like we need to be able to have these safe fucking spaces.
And I actually had this chat with Mel Webb on one of the previous episodes, and also having chats with many different people, including my housemates. As mentioned before, like I live with 3 females, and it's like everybody we talk to, and I'm a big supporter of having these clubs, but I also question at what point does it then balance out, and how does that balance out? And everybody I've spoken to, and as I say, I believe this as well, is they're perfect for creating these safe spaces to then create stepping stones to then have what we want in the future.
Yeah.
And even Mel was saying it's like, we'll probably never ever get to the point where it's 50-50, completely equal, and that's unfortunately just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, by creating these like specific, whether it be women's or women and ally, women and trans, whatever way you want to put that out there, it creates these areas to then, I guess, change the story, change the general tradition of it being a men's sport with women on the side.
Yeah.
It starts to help bring that back to being more equal.
Yeah.
As I say, whether or not in the future it'll ever get to that point, we don't know until it happens. But I think it's such a cool thing to see that happening. And it's very interesting to see how, I would even say, like, I've been in the sport since, I want to say like 2006-ish, early 2000s. And it'd be interesting to hear your side on this, how that's changed as a female, because I remember turning up to races and we'd go to a downhill race and there'd be 250, 300 riders and there'd be 3 females.
Yeah.
And literally, if you're a female and you're over the age of 18, I can see where your mind went with that for a second, but I was going to say you could race elite and you'd be a national podium place getter.
Yeah.
Fast forward now and you've got almost full fields of women racers.
Yeah.
And there is that separation in the class, and even in the younger age groups. I know, like, coaching with Devo, the local junior club, I think this year there was more girls in the club than there was boys in the club, and it's not by chance. It's just because that's who signed up.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when we, like when we're creating these groups, like I'm one of the founding members of the Short Sirens, their Queer and Allies initiative. And, you know, like the Short Sirens, they've only been around for like a year and a half, and they are 200 plus members. With weekly rides, and our Queer and Allies ride, the first ever, I would probably say in Canada, let alone BC. I can't believe we've never had one before, but we get 70, 65 people. I mean, that's a lot of people. Yeah. And it's like, oh, I guess we just kind of had to create it. Yeah. And, you know, speaking to, you know, like when do we get to balance it out? I think the more, and this is not about segregation at all. It's about like, having agency and building confidence, and then being able to like go out there and hold your own as well, but also still, you know, mentor and supporting, you know, the up and comers. And we still have a lot of work to do though. You know, I'm not going to name the festival, but I did go to a festival last year and I was appalled at, the mountain bike festival. I was appalled at the bro show that still happens, and I've said to everyone, I certainly wasn't the only, you know, like woman there, but most of the women there were part of the industry, or there were wives of, you know, people there, and I was probably maybe one of like 2 maybe gay people. Certainly I identify as non-binary, and so probably the only one. There was the only one in the category. Anyways, if I wanted to like win something, I definitely could have won something. But it was like a lot of drunk guys, like I saw like scrotum, and like it was almost like, here's a competition.
Yeah.
If you like whoever can like rip off Buddy's shirt first wins this amazing prize. And it was like, wow, so
Yeah.
we're there, right? And
that feels like you've gone back to the late 90s.
It was not a safe space
late
at all.
90s.
And it was like a punch in my face, because I was like, holy shit, we still have a lot of work to do. Like these, like, and it was a very well attended festival as well. And I'm like, damn, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. And that was one of my questions, and I've had, I won't mention names, but I've had certain
I love that we always,
we have to be careful here, because the person who told me this was, and still is, quite a reputable name in the industry, but the question that I've had, and different people have asked this to me, and I've asked people in your position, and it's sort of like, is there a point where having women's only things, will that then resegregate what you're trying to achieve? And it's sort of like, I understand what you're trying to achieve now with having that separation, of having the safe space, having the ability to have that stepping stone to sort of build that confidence, build that sort of comfortability around writing with different people and writing different things. And the question that always gets sort of thrown in my face a little bit and questioned, and personally I even questioned it before I did enough research into it, is at what point would that then create that resegregation of what you're doing, because you're kind of pulling yourself away from having men in that situation. And I kind of wonder if that would ever be the case. But the more that this goes on, and the more that it happens, and the more that these groups happen, at the end of the day, there's more women riding that are feeling more comfortable to then ride with the men. And it's changed my mind over time, in the sense of like, is it going to create segregation, or is it going to create sort of integration, I guess is the right way to put it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I actually think we're still like really early stages in being accepted, even as like really like we're not really looked at anymore as, oh, here, just move over, let me do it. Or can, like, let me pass you, or let me get ahead of you because I know I'm going to be faster or better. And we definitely are holding our own. And I love it. Like, one of my best friends and favorite person to ride with is Betty Burrell, and she's 76 years old.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who still don't know who she is. And so we'll like pull up to like a trailhead, and she gets a lot of like age discrimination, and guys will be looking at her and they'll be like, yeah, I think we're going to go ahead. And I was like, are you sure you want to do that? Because this bitch rips, man. And so sure enough, she's just like right on their ass. And I'm like, oh, I love this so much.
It's so funny.
Early stages, though, right?
It's so funny that you mentioned Betty, because she went viral in Australia through one of those like meme mountain bike pages, let's call it.
No.
And it was a positive post, but my dad sent me a video of her, and it was like, and as soon as I pulled up the video, I obviously knew exactly who it was and where she was riding. I was like, no way, like, we've all ridden with Betty. She's so cool. Yeah. And Dad's like, yeah, tell her I'm like 60 years old and I'm still riding bikes. And he's going to hate me for saying this on the podcast, but it was like, he was pumped to see that she was out there still riding, knowing that like he's got another 15 odd years before he gets to her age. Yeah. And, but yeah, like, same thing, like she's so inspirational. So it's kind of cool, but you're right, she does rip, and it's cool.
She does rip, and there's like so I mean, I mean, we could beat the whole segregation and safe space, like, but as long as people are still showing up, clearly we need to keep working at it. Yeah, for sure.
So I want to ask you a bit about before we get into the Debora effect, because I think that is such a cool thing, but tell me a bit about life cycle. I guess that's what you're talking about when you filmed across the Rockies and everything like that. And that sort of back in 2013, as you say, there was obviously a lot of, whether you want to call it sexism or body shaming or everything that else went along with that at that time period. How was that? Because I feel like there probably wasn't many like women specific mountain bike movies, and you went out there and made one yourself.
That's why I did it. I had worked for the Banff Center. They host like the Banff Mountain Film Festival, and one of my best friends was the director of the festival. And we'd watch all these films, or we'd go to the Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival, and we would just see like mountain bike porn after mountain bike porn, and there wasn't any stories, and there wasn't really any stories that involved women, certainly not gay people as well. That was always an issue too, is like unless they could really ride. And then you just kind of like you're watching these people, they're amazing, and you can't really put yourself there. So it's just kind of like it sort of fades into the background a little bit. And that was one of the things I was like, where are the women? And I remember actually like doing like a speaker series that asked that question, like, where are the women in adventure film? And so it's kind of, I mean, not awesome, but my mother died of ovarian cancer, and we learned that it was genetic. We have the BRCA gene in our family. And so at the time, I think there were only like 1 or 2 genetic testers in Canada. And so the wait list was a really long time. Yeah. And I was kind of like, because my mom was actually quite young when she passed away. And I was like, shit, like, if this is the way it's going to go, like, I better do something with myself. And I was kind of spinning my wheels, and I wanted, in some way, I just like, how can I intersect my love of adventure sports and creativity? And potentially raise awareness of ovarian cancer. And so I woke up one morning, I sprung out of bed, like just sat up like straight. And I was like, I'm going to create a mountain bike movie, and I'm going to mountain bike the Rockies. I'm going to be the first woman to ever do it. Now, I didn't really know how to mountain bike at all. And I didn't even have a bike. So, I mean, there was like a huge process. But yeah, in the end, it became the story that I think people were looking for, is that in my mind, it was like, it was going to be an adventure film, but it actually ended up being a personal journey, because I went through having injury and then recovery, and I went through the whole like the fat equals low fitness or whatever. Like I went through that whole mindset.
Body shame.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of self-sabotage talk, and yet the drive for me was that it was really important to get the message out. And I ended up having like a very emotional personal journey on that film. And as a documentary, you don't hold those things back. I was working with a beautiful group of filmmakers who were also adventure athletes. They do the North Shore Search and Rescue show for
they do that
Network.
now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so they were pretty badass, and they were following me around, and they were capturing everything and being incredible storytellers. And I ended up finding out while I was on my mountain bike adventure, the results of my genetic testing. And I don't have the BRCA gene, but I went through like a whole plethora of what if I die? And ovarian cancer at the time wasn't very well known. So it was the thing I think that people were looking for, and they didn't realize that they were looking for it. And I still think like, there's a lot of things I cringe at when I look at it. And especially like being in an audience. I remember when it debuted at the Banff Mountain Film Festival in like 2014, I think it was like 900 audience members. And I'm crying like on camera and like on the big screen. And I'm like, oh God, this is so cringy. But it actually, I still get emails from people who have seen the film, and now it's, it's circulating still to like 10 years later at like cancer agencies as like a patient sort of uplifting story. And it actually won a few awards, and it toured the world, and I was named Miss January for World of Mountain Bike magazine in Germany. So it was like, holy shit, I guess we were just looking for that story.
Yeah. And I think that ties in with so many different things that have happened in the sense of like everything we've just spoken about, like your story, giving that out in the sense of getting out there. Just because you're the first woman, I don't think really changed the world, but it was the ability to tell that story.
It had nothing to do with even mountain biking.
Yeah.
It was like this, person's personal journey, and also the drive to do something that they were not equipped to do, but there was like a push to do it. I mean, I trained a lot for it. Yeah, I was like, why am I losing any weight? Of course, that conversation.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about like menopause, because now I realize I'm like, oh, fuck, I had a hormone imbalance. Anyways, that's a whole other podcast. I will have a fireside chat at the next Ride Lab about menopause.
So let's quickly touch on that a bit more as we move forwards as well. Like,
we're not talking about my
no. I don't know enough about that to get into that topic at all.
I'm just learning.
Yeah,
early stages. Yeah.
But more about the fireside chats, because you've mentioned it a couple of times, and yeah, tell me more, because we did one at Steed while I was working there. We had a bunch of different people, all the, let's call them North Shore legends on there. But tell me more about that, because I feel like they're so interesting, and the topics, as you say, aren't just like mansplaining how to change a tire or how to fix your gears or whatever that may be. They are related to the community and things like that. Like, what was that like to sort of host and sort of, I guess, organize?
Well, what it was like was it was a deep honor and a privilege, and I'm sitting there with like Katie Holden, who was like essentially the founder of women's like Red Bull formation, and now like as we saw like last month, women being invited into the Rampage. And that's part of her legacy and her work. And she wasn't able to do it herself as a free rider, but as a founder of Formation. And, we're sitting there at these fireside chats, and I'm sitting across from Katie Holden, like, what a legend. And we're so in love with each other, and we're having like a little laugh. And so it's like, it's such an honor to be able to like host these conversations with people and to introduce them to, like a younger generation who may not know who Katie Holden is or her work in free ride. And also like to, like, because it runs a huge demographic. And, I'm hosting these chats with like Tara Yanis, who is now part of the Paralympian basketball team for Canada, who, became paraplegic from BMX racing, like four cross, I think it was. And so the chats are like these like real beautiful personal journeys of, like overcoming obstacles or adversity, or sometimes they're just, like, hey, what do you pack in your in your pack? Like they kind of run the gamut, but they're so special. I mean, like the last year alone, I don't know. They're just really important conversations that I think we've been like starving to have. Yeah. And anything goes, which I love. It's not, like you have an outline. I never have an outline. I'm just kind of like, let's light the fire and let's see where it goes. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, they're really special. And I remember like Ash and I were having a conversation about, gosh, I don't even remember what our actual topic was. It could have even been like, what's it like to be a female mechanic, like bike mechanic. And then our conversation kind of stemmed into, like sex trafficking, which isn't, a great conversation to be having, but it's kind of where we went. And that was kind of where we went with it. And
if anyone knows Ash, she can turn any conversation in the complete opposite direction, and you don't even know how you got there.
Yeah,
but
and it's great.
That's good.
It's really good. Or, like, a dear friend, Munira, who always finishes last, and that's kind of her motto. And she does these incredible things like the BC bike race, which is a super challenging like multi-day event, and she's like, I don't give a shit if I finish last.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish.
Yeah,
though.
and she's enjoying it.
And she's enjoying it. Yeah, and she's a woman of color, and she's older, and it's just like, fuck yeah, go Manera, go. It's like, it's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Side question for you after talking about that. While doing all of that, did you ever get imposter syndrome?
Oh, interesting question.
And the reason I say that, because you're talking about all these cool people, and shout out to Katie Holden, because like her work is amazing, and I think, yeah, so cool there. But sitting across from people like yourself, I've had like tons of different people across the industry, cycling, wherever. And yeah, I definitely get things like that sometimes, or people come up to me and they're like, oh, like you're, what was the one someone said to me something along the lines of, you've got a face for radio on the retail floor. And I just looked at him and I just couldn't stop but laugh. But yeah, like having those conversations with those type of people, how do you go about that? Like,
yeah, well, so here's where, you know, having like these safe spaces comes from, is that I deserve a seat at the table. Always. Yeah. No matter what I'm bringing to that table, I deserve a seat at the table. And I do, you know, I sometimes think I've really got nothing to offer. You know, I'm not like some groundbreaking athlete. I haven't, you know, like, you know, paved a way for women in free ride. I haven't won a race, you know. So I'm kind of like, what do I have to offer? And I think it's just, it all comes down to being human and connecting with people on a human level, which I mean, I don't think that I'm particularly gifted in it. It's just, that's sort of where I found myself, and people like to talk to me. So
yeah. And you feel, I think, for myself, and not to make this about me, but I feel like I've learnt to be comfortable with myself. And I think that's what I see in you, and listening to you now and talking about your story and things like that. It's like, I feel that you're so comfortable with your own everything, if we want to call it that, whatever aspect you want to look at, it feels like you're so comfortable. And I think that's what I'm starting to learn. And that's why I was interested to hear what your thought was with that. And if you're like, I'm nothing special, but I still deserve a seat at the table, I think that's such a cool mentality. And it's interesting to hear that. As I say, it was just something that popped into the back of my head, and I'm like, I wonder.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And, you know, it kind of, that speaks to like the community building aspect of the work that I do. And, you know, when you asked me earlier about like some of the things that I do, it is, the umbrella would be building community is really, it doesn't matter if I'm, you know, like the work I do, let's say like in the marine industry, or hosting or emceeing a film festival, or a mountain bike festival, or being in a movie. Like when Shimano, you know, called me to do the Debora effect, I'm like, how the fuck do they even know who I am? Right? And it's just this like personality, I guess. It's like, oh, this person builds community. We build community. We want to tell stories about people who are like, you know, at the grassroots level.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And let's go down that path, because that's such a cool series that Shimano did, in the sense of their like at home, like all of the stuff that they've done in that. There's so many different cool videos. I can't even remember the name of the one, but they had, I've forgotten the name now.
Well, I think All Bodies on Bikes. I wonder if that, was that a Shimano original?
I think so, yeah. They had the dog one.
Right.
With Georgia Astral.
Yeah.
Georgia Astral, I think, was on there with her dog and things like that. And I think some of those cool stories. But so how did that come about? Like, they just rang you up out of the blue, or was there prior conversation? Or because like sometimes that does happen.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know that they knew who I was, but who I am's. But a really good friend of mine, the filmmaker Darcy Hennessy Turin, she did Betty's film, North Shore Betty. She did The Moment, which was the birth free ride mountain biking, tons of other award-winning documentaries. And we, after I'd had my head injury, my concussion, she had also, she had gone down that path, and she knew how, like what the recovery for me might be. And so she invited me to work on the film The Moment with her. And so we did some work on The Moment, and we just got along like gangbusters. I actually met Darcy. I interviewed her for the Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival when her film The Little Things came out, which was a snowboarding film, I think. And anyways, I guess our friendship developed and my personality persisted. And Darcy's a beautiful storyteller and a filmmaker. And so I think it was actually at her being the filmmaker, like Shimano reached out to her and they were like, hey, we want to do a Shimano original. And she was like, I know the perfect person who, has a story to tell and who's going to be great on camera. And, it's in alignment with Shimano. So she called me up and she's like, I want to make a movie about you. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And she's like, yeah, I want to make a movie about your recovery from your brain injury and who you are in mountain biking. And, like you as Debora, because you just have like this, beautiful way of just being yourself, which makes other people feel free to be themselves. And so I was really floored by it. And I would have done it for free, but anyways, I'm so happy I got paid for it. But I was like, well, we can only do it if we can do it as a mountain bike musical, because that was actually what really saved me in coming back to mountain biking, was singing in the forest.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting there on this Zoom call with the guys from Shimano in Japan, and I had to pitch the musical, and so I had to sing an opera.
I would love to see the Zoom call, like all of them, and then you in the side screen, just and like
Darcy in the top screen, just like I'm not filming this. Like Debora's gonna have we're just gonna let her do this, but there's no fucking way I'm filming this as a musical. We did film a lot of like musical components. It didn't make the cut of the film, but I'm gonna get the B-roll.
But I think like even watching it, like I only watched it again the other day, and now you say that, there is so much music energy involved in that. And one of my questions was going to be about getting back on the bike, but I can't tap to a rhythm to save my life. But my listening to music, I think, changes my life so dramatically. Yeah. Like if I need to go chill out, yes, I'll go for a ride and I'll go out and just clear my head on the bike. But I think the music that accompanies that ride really dictates how I feel after it. And it's like the amount of times I've gone out, and I'm sure you can sort of relate to this, and the amount of times I've gone out and had to listen to like the most angriest yelling, like high intensity music. And then I come back and I'm like, all right, I'm zen.
Yeah.
Or the other way, like I just want to go out and have a chill ride, and it's like chill music. Like, it's so cool to hear that. And then rewatching that video and the movie as such, that opening scene, like obviously it's a pretty intense scene with the car crash, but
filmed it like pretty much a block away from here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go. But the scenes leading up to that crash is like you just screaming at the top of your voice. I don't even know what the song was, but it was like so energy, like building. It was so cool.
Yeah. Well, there's a mantra in there, and I really kind of stuck to it. And it was like this super uplifting song. And it was like, you are magnificent. You can do anything you want. You put your mind to it, put your grind to it, and you can do it. Get up, get motivated, get inspired, get your motherfucking clothes off. So that's kind of like always sort of been there in the back of my head. I'm like, yeah, I can do anything I want. I'm magnificent. I'm like, it's just like
and
total
just
like pump you up. Yeah.
But the way it builds out, and exactly as you just did it then, that's what I loved about it, was like that whole entry, like couple of minutes of the video. I'm just like, I need to go out and go for a run. Like, I'm so amped up after watching like 2 minutes of video. And it's like, but exactly that. And it's like such a perfect way to build into that story.
Yeah.
But it's, I didn't even click with me until you just said it then about the music. And so tell me more about that side of things for yourself, because I was going to go down a completely different path here. But
yeah, well, I like music was like a way for me to like build new neural pathways in my brain. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's been proven.
Yeah.
And I always like sing my feelings in the forest, and it was a way for me to also just like process and get it out, because I've spent a lot of time in solitary, self-inflicted solitary, because I just felt like if I couldn't ride my bike, then I have lost, like my community or my ability to participate in things that I, that brought me a lot of joy. And so I'd go out to the forest and I'd sing my feelings and make little operas, or listen to music that had really like empowered messaging to it. And that really helped me kind of like find my rhythm and my flow again. And so when, when my riding mates would call me all the time and they'd be like, Debora, like, cause they're fantastic riders. If there's a race, they'd be on a podium. And I just was like, oh man, like there's no way that I can ride with you. I can't even keep up. And so it became this thing of, okay, we can go riding as long as I get to sing and you're my chorus. And so we just had a lot of fun with it. And they would, like hide out in the bushes and they would like poke their little heads out, waving their arms, and they'd be like singing, on her bicycle, or whatever the fuck I was coming up with. And so it made it interactive and it made it fun, and it took the pressure away. And, we'd just be doing stupid things like bobsled, like nothing major, but it was just, we were out and we were having fun and we were singing. And that's kind of how I started getting back into riding again.
So tell me more about that, because in the movie you talk about how it took you such a long time. It was like 6-7 months of just riding up and down a fire road.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 7-year recovery. I wasn't on my bike for like 6 years. And still to this day, I'm kind of, hesitant. I'm like, okay, I will not ride, like anything that's greasy.
Yeah, which is understandable.
Yeah, I don't want to be off my bike for like something stupid. I'm just here for pure joy. And so it was actually that mountain highway, the FSR road going up and down just over and over and over again. And there were like barriers to doing that. Like this wasn't my first concussion. This is probably like number 4 or 5, and you've got an elevated heart rate. Any amount of elevation as well causes a lot of like brain distortion, and I'd get like really emotionally dysregulated if I pushed myself a little too hard, and I'd be angry or I'd start crying. And I'm just going up like maybe the first or the second switchback, and I just did that forever. And then I'd add another switchback and I'd get up to like Crinkum, and then I'd add another switchback and I'd get somewhere else, and then I'd always come down. I was too afraid to go on the trail. And then excuse me, and then one day I just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna go on the trail. And I can't remember what the first trail was. I was so scared that I probably like gave myself like like whiplash from just holding on so tightly. But that's kind of how I started, and that was like 6 or 7 months of that. And I just kind of rode up the FSR and down the FSR just so I could be in nature. And I think I made it up to the 6th or the 7th switchback, almost up to like 7th secret. And I was like, holy cow, I'm here. Amazing. Yeah, like I just finally got there. I'd never drop into 7th at all. In fact, I didn't do espresso until I think maybe a year ago was the first time I'd ever ridden espresso.
Yeah, wow.
So I mean, I'd done other things. Like I would do a lot of riding in Squamish and my, moving to Salt Spring Island during the pandemic. I mean, that's pretty easy riding over there. It was
Yeah.
like nice buff trails, nothing too technical, and it was just really getting my confidence back. But yeah, I just kind of started dropping into some trails and building my confidence up more and more. Yeah.
So how was that breaking that mental barrier? Because I feel like that's something that I've spoken about a lot, and I really think that's such a hard thing to do, is once you essentially, for whatever reason, that barrier is created, whether it's like stress, accident, trauma,
Yeah.
whatever's caused it. But talking about breaking that down a little bit, and how was that for you? Like, obviously, you built yourself up to getting up the fire road and feeling comfortable again on
Yeah.
the bike, and then you just mentioned then like you were super stiff and rigid and things like that. How did you find that slowly breaking that wall back down?
I didn't do it alone. In fact, I had a really good support system of riders. You know, the names that pop into my head, that I see in my head when I think back to those days, are, you know, good pals like Isabel de Guise, or like Karen Grubb, or yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of like thinking back to like this place, and we all learned to ride together at this program called like the Endless Biking Enduro XC program.
Okay.
And that's where I made all these connections. And when I started to like build my confidence more and more, it was because I wasn't alone. And I was yeah, I was in the woods with my friends that I felt really safe and comfortable with, and I think that was the barrier. And the really interesting thing that happened for me is I realized that I didn't lose my skill at all. Like, I was still a really good rider. Like, it was like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was the most profound thing for me, was that once I got over the fact that I wasn't going to hurt myself and that I could trust myself again,
Yeah.
then I started adding more and more, you know, like features. There's this in the film, the Debora effect. It doesn't show in the film, but you know, on like Lower Digger, there's the ramp that you go down, like right at the bottom.
Right at the bottom.
That was pretty much the scariest thing that I had ever ridden in my life. And now I don't even notice that it's there anymore, kind of thing. So it's just, again, that the barrier of just like trusting myself and my skill and trusting the people that I'm riding with. And I think that's really it. I don't think we can do these things alone.
For sure. And I think that's why I wanted to hear what you did and how you did it, because I think that's such a big thing, is like surrounding yourself with the right people that want to support you and go out there and actually help you do that. And everything from, as you were saying, like singing in the forest and like forcing them to sing and having fun and just making it like a good time. But interesting to also hear you say like you didn't lose that like reaction and that sort of riding skill as such, because it's always like, even myself, I've had enough concussions to be probably need to be more careful than what I actually am.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like that foggy brain and that like slow, when you're out there just being a general human and you're like, oh, I feel sluggish and I feel disgusting. But then when you get back on the bike, as you say, it is just like riding a bike. And for some people, unfortunately, it's not as good as that. But at the same time, if it does work out in that way, it's such a crazy feeling that you can go from feeling so abnormal to so normal. Yeah. And it's like such a cool feeling.
Well, and it kind of takes me back to, you know, when I speak about like trusting myself and my ability, it's also like trusting my own intuition to make good decisions for myself. And, you know, no offense like to Western medicine or doctors or whatever, but had I listened to them, I would have never gone back on a bike.
Yeah.
Because they were like, you know, you're, at the time I was in my 40s, and they're like, you know, you're older, you're not going to recover as well. This isn't your first time. Like, if you have one more accident, you're toast. And that didn't happen. And so it was just like, okay, maybe I could stay at home and crochet. Nothing against people that crochet, but it's not my form of recovery.
When you go from throwing yourself down mountains to crocheting, there is a difference there.
Yeah, for sure. And I just kind of had to trust that this is what I needed to do in order to recover. And I don't know if I talked about it in the film, but one of the most profound things for me is that what took 6 years to try and heal from, and doing all of, you know, the modalities of healing, nothing worked. And then I got on my bike, and like 7 months later, I still struggle with some things for sure. I know how to take care of myself a lot better. But I'm working, you know, like I'm like a totally functional, high functioning human being. Whereas before it was like, oh man, like I can't even like leave my house some days.
Yeah. Like in the movie, one of the things you said is like, it was giving you the ability to stay in the present.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was my form of mindfulness.
Yeah.
For sure.
And if anybody's had a heavy concussion, I think that's the worst part of it is you can be doing anything, and the amount of times your brain will just start wandering away.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could be as simple or whatever way you want to put it, but driving a car for that matter, and it's like you should be so focused on the road, yet your brain could be floating away looking at something on the sidewalk.
You don't remember how you got from A to B. You're like, oh, I'm home?
Yeah.
Oh, did I lock the door?
Yeah, exactly. But it's so interesting to hear you say that like that was your trigger to stay in the present moment.
Yeah. Well, you can't not be in the present moment, because I couldn't have another accident. And so you're like, you have to remain so almost like hyper focused to, oh, there's this route, there's this rock. Okay. Now there's like this, you know, steep incline. Now there's this decline and our descent. And, you know, our mountains in the North Shore, they're almost like a perfect training ground for concussion recovery because they're so technical.
Yeah.
Other than the FSR, but they are pretty technical. And so you have to remain focused, but you know, you're working yourselves too. And like movement is super key as well. And you just, I don't know, I felt really good about myself after I'd come back from a ride.
Yeah. And it's super interesting that you had that sort of feeling and change and result, because I'm kicking myself because I didn't look up her name, but there was a skier, a very good skier, like Olympic level skier, that had quite a bad concussion, massive brain damage. And her mum, from as soon as she got home from the hospital, went against everything that the doctors were saying, in the sense of like, keep her in a dark room, keep her. And I can't remember, her mum had some sort of alternate medicine background. And as soon as she got home, she was like activating and working the brain. And it was like, yes, to start with, it was very simple steps, but this girl is now a motivational speaker and has hosted, like I said, where I met her was in one of the like the VIMF movie nights and things, and she was hosting that type of thing. But back to being, as much as you could say, she was a full functioning adult, living her life as best as she could, going from that backwards to being essentially what would have been a couch potato or a vegetable.
Yeah.
And prior to her accident, she was, as I say, like one of the best skiers in the world.
Yeah.
And it's quite crazy to see that difference. So it's interesting to hear your side of it as well in that type
Well,
of
I kind of
things.
kick myself in the butt too, because I'm like, I mean, I think I knew long before that what I was told to do wasn't working, and I went against like my own like knowledge of my own body and my own way of recovering. But they just like instill the fear in you that, oh, if you have one more
if you make a mistake, you're done.
You're not coming back from this. And it's like, fuck you, man. I have come back from so much, but I get it. You know, they're not meant to do harm or whatever.
And
like that.
and at the end of the day, if it did go wrong, like obviously it can come back to bite them, but
For sure. Well, I remember this one, you know, like Betty, for instance, who's broken how many bones in her body? Like
too many to
too
count.
many to count. And she was like 50 at the time, and you know, now I'm 50, and so I kind of laugh at this, but she had like broken her wrist or whatever, and I think her doctor was like, you know, you should probably pick a new sport. Betty's 76 now, right? She's like ripping it. And I'm like, man, if some doctor told me like right now that maybe I should pick a new sport because I like broke my, I'd be like, you have no idea like who I am or where I'm going or like,
what's happening.
Yeah. Just shut your beak. So I love it. I love that people are like feisty now too. And they're just like, no, I'll ride my bike. Yeah. Thanks, but no thanks. But I mean, like the whole like sitting in the dark room and not having any stimulation was why it took me like 6 or 7 years to recover. Now we know more. We know better. Yeah.
I almost feel sorry for some doctors having to deal with athletes like ourselves that need to do other things other than what the standard medical says, but
there's the template, you know, it's
exactly.
like, oh well, you know, dark room, no movement, no stimulation, no nothing, and it's like, wow, that's not gonna fly.
Not anymore. Before we wrap things up, I want to ask you a bit about your marine journey, because I feel like you've been sharing that quite a lot in recent sort of months, weeks. What, how, why? Because I feel like it's so not out of character for yourself, but like everything we've spoken about never really, it sort of surprises me that you're in that world. But tell me a bit about that, like how, why, I guess.
Because it looks good on Tinder.
Okay.
No, I'm just joking.
Sure.
I'm joking.
It's
really
the whole...
hot when you're like wrangling ropes and you got like this big boat and you're like, look at me. No,
it's like the guy with his shirt off holding the big fish and fishing rod, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, look at my big firefighting hose. It was definitely a career change. So, you know, being, having a head injury, like a serious concussion for like 6 years, I actually, I chose that I wasn't going to go back into the workforce looking at a computer screen. And at the time I was living on Salt Spring Island, you know, surrounded by a body of water. And this was like my re-entry back into the workforce. And it was kind of perfect. I started working on this little water taxi that would take the high school students from the outer, you know, Gulf Islands and bring them to Salt Spring to go to school. The key for me, because I never saw myself in the marine industry, I can't swim either, which is kind of an interesting thing. But one of the kids that I transported on a daily basis looked up to me and she was like, Deborah, I want to be a deckhand just like you. And that was a trigger for me because I was like, holy shit, they've never actually seen a woman in this role before. And as my time on the water taxi started to like dwindle and I was looking out for you know, more stability and some better things and ways to challenge myself. I mean, I'm always drawn to the natural world and marine life for sure. And so I ended up taking this program almost in a way because I guess, you know, that little girl on the water taxi kind of inspired me to push myself to be more visible. And the stuff that I do, you know, in mountain biking or in mountain sports as like a public figure or an ambassador can really translate when you're working with people on a one-on-one basis. And this was during the pandemic, so there was no emceeing anything at the time. And so I was like, wow, I'm making a difference in this like little girl's life.
Yeah.
So, you know, what more can I do? And so I just started on this trajectory and I ran into a lot of, you know, as you and I were chatting before the podcast, a lot of misogyny and a lot of sexism, especially in the, you know, in the marine world. There's a lot of salty sailors out there who, when they see a woman, they're like, yeah. I mean, I've lost out on many opportunities because of my gender, which is still really unfortunate. But I, you know, like, mountain biking doesn't pay, and I needed a job that was going to be like
something
stable on a regular where I can like still be, you know, breaking barriers, and I still break barriers like every day. I'm like one of like maybe 5 women who work out of Horseshoe Bay now for BC Ferries who are allowed on the bridge. I'm a bridge watchman, which is really cool. And now I'm, you know, slowly moving away from BC Ferries to do more impactful work in ocean spill cleanup. And it's just it kind of it sort of fits in alignment in some ways, because as I am visible and as I'm standing out there, especially as a woman who's now in her 50s, who's like slinging rope and one of very few people who are allowed in places that only men are allowed. It's still, it's like, I'm just gonna continue to do this and represent and earn a decent living, and call in sick every other week so I can go mountain bike and host events that are really important to me. So,
sure. If they're going to let you do it, then do it for sure.
Yeah. So it's kind of, it's really weird. It's kind of like it's the thing that just doesn't make, it's like, which one of these things just doesn't belong? But it does in a way that it's not something that you see women doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, I haven't really noticed any women, but then at the same time I'm like, it's probably because there isn't any to notice.
Yeah.
So all the power to you for doing that. So thanks. Congrats.
I got power. Ding, 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 ding. Anyways, thanks for having me.
More musicals. Thank you for coming on and sharing, because I think your whole story, as I say, we've done just over an hour already, and it's it feels like it went past so quickly. But thank you for coming on and sharing.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this is great, and thanks for giving me a microphone. And I am still single.
Yeah.
So.
It was so funny, because I'm like, when I mentioned to a few people that I was getting you on, they're like, "Do you really want to give Debora a microphone unfiltered for an hour?" And I'm like, hey, I don't know. If there's something controversial that comes out of it, sure. So, hey.
There's nothing controversial. But so I did actually get an email from the Mountain Film Festival, because I just thought last year was such a gong show. I had literally been broken up with 5 minutes before I went on stage, and I was like, oh, fuck. I actually think my microphone was on too when the text came through, and then I was just trying to it wasn't a meaningful relationship. It was a Tinder thing. But when you've been living on a small southern Gulf island, you kind of get cabin fever.
For sure.
Anyways, so they've got this new program director, I think, and he sent me an email, via this person, via that person, and I'm like, he has no idea. I
was gonna say, he hasn't seen you at the previous shows.
No, not at all. And there are some people that really really like it and enjoy it and think it's funny. But I did go mountain biking with a guy last week, and he's like, "You look familiar," and I was like, And he's like, "Oh, you swear a lot. I think you were the host of the Mountain Film Festival one year," and I was like, "That was me."
Yeah, I was there.
Welcome to the Debora Show. Yeah. So, anyways, nothing bad came out of this podcast. We're good. We're great. But yes, in a couple of weeks I will be hosting the Mountain Film Festival, and I have no dating things to be upset about these days, so I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Mountain bikes, I guess.
I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah, I know. I'm on Hinge right now, so I'm trying to find the next story.
So when I say to people, where can they find you? Hinge is obviously one place. Where else is a great place to get in contact with you if they've got questions?
Yeah, the best place is on Instagram, and my handle is @D De Napoli. So DDENAPOLI. My account is private. I have no idea why, but
sure.
Yeah, just hit me up. Any questions? And all my films are either on a Google search or Chat GPT, apparently.
There's lots of information you can get off Chat GPT, trust me. But thanks
for having me. Yeah, it was great.
No problem. Thanks.